Ooh, baby,
I'm
another time for the air to become a bit nippy and bring about the goth women that fled Hot Topics and Spencer's. I'm talking about another time for the ghouls to crawl out of the pitch black homes and feel like they can go outside without getting a third-degree sunburn. That's right. It's that time of year when I come back to deliver that pumpkin spice latte of basic film reviews and film suggestions. And this time, I've got some pretty good bangers and also some awful ones too. But my kernels, we're starting off our October with a new title From Scream to Screen. This year I'll do some sort of a semblance of a weekly, maybe, yeah, probably a bi weekly kind of review thing. So my videos can come out less rushed, and also because like getting 4 hours of sleep every day wasn't really awesome sauce. And also, college kind of got a bit busy. You don't care about that, but I think it's time to get down to my first selection. We're getting into spooky side of paranormal fiction by starting off with a movie from Netflix. That movie, I'm telling you, it's called The Cursed. Side note, every movie I've been reviewing, it's got a bit of gore, some little bit of silly side titty, with a dash of straight booty cheeks hanging out in a couple scenes. But, it's gonna happen. Usually, every horror movie has to feature some semblance of cheek meat, but who cares? Because the movie starts off the way I expect it to, in war. Moreover, World War One, France, where we see soldiers get destroyed by bullets when leading a charge on German soldiers. Skipping a little bit, we see the soldiers, like group, battalion, or whatever, get hauled off to a medical camp to extract bullets from whoever is shot up. But there's one guy in particular that has really something interesting, and that little interesting thing is a silver bullet lodged in his chest. Without any semblance of an explanation, we get a little time rewind of 30 years ago with rural France with its sickly little inhabitants murdering some of the scariest things I've seen in a while. Gypsies! These gypsies do their typical thing of coming to a land they claim that was theirs and refuse to leave. And seeing as they're magical gypsies, because it's an accurate representation of Romani people cursing with evil silver coins, the French people and their Irish manor lord Seamus said, "Hell nah, get this hag off of my land before I blow her head smooth off." So they hired some mercenaries to help kill them all because, bullets are a lot stronger than gypsy magic. If that weren't already bad enough, they took the gypsy leader's son, cut his hands and feet off, and tied him to a post to act as a scarecrow. And, seeing as they done killed like 20 people already, they try to keep it all under wraps, but one of the elder sons finds out about the slaughter and tells his friends to go into the killing field to pick up some silver teeth from a dirty little tin box they find at the feet of this scarecrow. I don't know why. It's just a little thing you do, and your little friends are like, "I'm bored. Hey, look at those," and they put them in their mouth. But that playing around don't go so well, because after he put them gnarly things in his mouth, he starts munching on
You've
Seamus'
seen
son
all there is to
Edward
see.
like he's a head of lettuce.
Would you like to exit
Of
the
course,
combat
seeing as you
tutorial?
got whatever rabies disease you get from Gypsy
You sure
Silver,
about that?
it makes Edward sick,
Hot
and he
damn,
goes
would you
into
look
like
at
some sort of
that?
spasming in the
Just
night where he's
remember,
bleeding and oozing
them
or whatever,
walkers
and he
out
flees
there
into the woods
ain't gonna treat
after
you as
like
kindly as the
8 hours
ones in
of his
here.
little preemptive attack. So he flees into the woods, disappear for like a whole solid week, and that's not really the best thing you need to do when you're, dying. But in this week, more and more people are dying to a mysterious beast that they come to conclude is a wolf. This, of course, attracts a guy named McBride. He's a resident pathologist that is tracking some gypsies, definitely not the same as the ones that recently got made into worm food, but, doesn't matter because he goes out to stay with Seamus' family as he investigates the strange case of murders and missing gypsies. Skip a bit, and we see that this beast actually acts similar to a virus because it spreads every time you're bitten by one of the beasts. And I don't really know if you would. You know what? Screw that. It's more lycanthropy than an actual paranormal thing. The only reason it's in this list for paranormal horror is because it's got gypsies that, or not gypsies that curse you with evil magic, so that's paranormal. So shut up. I know you were already writing the comments, but you can step off because we actually skip a bit and see that the beast that infects another person was a little poor French girl that just shows us how they transform in such a gruesome and visceral way that just screams painful. But after all that happens, over time they actually capture a beast, kill it, cut it open, and they learn that your body still stays the same, but this little sickly beast form acts more of like a shell, which is kind of cool, but it's also like an interesting thing. So, I kind of looked at the length of the movie, and I find out there's like an hour left when this happens. So, surprise, surprise, there's another, and it attacks another person, which infects that lead housemaid named Anais. She hides her injury from everyone else because she's got zombie bite rules down to a near perfect T, and transforms inside the house, infecting Seamus right before he blows her brains out with a double barrel shotty. Seeing as Seamus is infected, he decides to go to the barn to unalive himself. YouTube didn't like me saying the other word. By lighting himself on fire, which probably is the worst way to, die, considering he had access to like 40 guns in his basement. But who cares? His house is on fire. Why? Because when he blew that maid's head smooth off, he like dropped I think it was a candle, and it lit a curtain on fire, and his house pretty much just set ablaze. And before he actually set himself ablaze, he tells McBride that he's got to take his family to the church since Seamus set the house on fire with his little kerfuffle. And McBride also got the silver teeth. I also completely neglected to tell you about that. And he melts them down into some bullets. Because the last bit of information they are told from a Bible verse is that the silver is actually from the 30 silver coins that Judas got himself when he betrayed Jesus and sold him out to the Romans. Meaning that the only way to contain this hellish beast is a silver projectile that moves at a rate of 2,000 feet per second. Jumping a bit more, and the mother lets into the beast because, there's still her son missing. He was bitten by the nasty teeth. If you can put two and two together, obviously the beast is her son. So she kind of got that mother intuition or whatever. Opens the door and subsequently gets an assist of like 5 more kills because this boy just slaughters everybody else inside. But this very loud situation wakes McBride from his very deep slumber, and he tries to get a clear shot of the monster. But he couldn't really do that because the stupid mother's in the way, and he's like, "Move, dum dum," and she's looking at him like she's actually stupid. It doesn't move at all, so he shoots, and it like cuts right into her body, instantly like clears her out, hits the beast. It incapacitates him. The beast doesn't really die; it just more reverts back into a person. And take a guess who that person was. I'll give you 5 seconds. If you guess Edward, you're right. Seeing as this certainly left Edward and his sister as orphans, McBride adopts them as his own, and they allow them to live their lives to the fullest. Except for Edward. We learn that he was actually the captain that we saw in the first 10 minutes of the movie. That scene where they all got lit up by bullets? When they have him on the quote-unquote surgery table, they pull all the bullets out of him, lay a sheet over his corpse, take his tag. The sister meets McBride on his deathbed as an older woman and leaves the last silver bullets next to him. And after this, the film fades to black to herald the end. This movie was not bad. It was great to start off with because it features some pretty good acting and fantastic cinematography. I absolutely love the monster design because it kind of looks like a mix of Belial's nasty, fleshy humanoid look from the movie Basket Case. Elite ball knowledge right there. Those who know from peak cinema. And, the slimy four-legged Ratma abomination from VHS 94. Even though this movie was a Netflix original, it was not bad. Surprisingly good, even though the use of CGI was, kind of choppy and bad. But everything else was magnifique. The gore effects were pretty good too. There's like this scene where this guy was like walking through the field and the beast is like running around and it slams into his arm and that thing just snapped it like a twig. Like the bone was sticking out. The little putty kind of looked goofy a bit, but it was like dripping and spurting a little bit. And like he I don't know, it was pretty crazy. It was not bad gore for a Netflix film. But that's going to swipe off The Cursed as we make way for our next movie.
Down in front of a store, guess what jumped off the roof? A monkey. Get what he
The
said?
Monkey. That's right. Next up on the chopping block is The Monkey. This movie just died. The story's nothing to be held as a spectacle that needs more attention, but we're going to get into it anyway. The movie starts off with a goofy, intricate kill of a random pawn shop owner where he calls the monkey a toy that ain't evil, even though the guy who gave him the toy said it's not a toy and it is definitely evil. But, after he gets his gutty works pulled out by a spear gun after, not knocking on wood saying it ain't evil, he just dies. He lays there on the floor. But, who cares? Because we cut to the future a little bit where we meet our two main characters. Two boys named Hal and Billy. Hal's soft spoken and has glasses, while his brother Billy is just a dick. He sucks. I don't like him in any way. He's just not a nice character. It's like they herald him as a brother you think might have a redemption path, but just doesn't like follow through it. But who cares? Because the monkeys that, not the monkeys, the two boys that find this evil monkey actually found it completely by accident when they were rooting through their divorced dad's stuff and happen upon the toy. So, being boys, they play with the monkey and they turn the key, which later on actually kills a babysitter that was supposed to be watching them at a hibachi grill. The way they did this poor girl in was by cutting her head clean off when the hibachi chef was hitting on her. And, Bro Chacho done made a rice heart, put that little spatula underneath, and was beating that thing. And then he tried doing some spin flicks, like jujitsu knife turns and everything, but he got so close to her friggin' face that he done cut her head off clean. But it was pretty crazy because, like, her head slides off, hits the grill, starts cooking as it looks at Hal. And, they kind of figure out, the boys at least, figure out the monkey's a little bit evil. Because, that thing just looks evil. Like, that thing looked like it crawled out of Satan's butthole just to wreak nothing but havoc. But Hal gets fed up with his brother one day because he spreads so many sickening rumors about him, like how he's just a big baby whose only role in the household is just to be a punching bag. And, getting these rumors spread around school every day gets him relentlessly bullied by a group of girls. And I'm just going to interject here for a bit. Every situation and every encounter he has with these girls could have just literally been stopped if he just walked the other way. But who cares because his entire school experience is just running into these girls all the time. Like, who cares about survival instinct, huh? Because this guy is just dumb. But, we actually see that Hal shares a room with his brother in the basement. And, when he comes home covered in bananas and stuff because he made a joke, or not, he didn't make a joke, his brother made a joke about him, saying he could keep the monkey if he decided to be called Mrs. Monkey. So that's what he did. And then he spread that rumor around his school. And then the girls that bully him all the time brought an entire, like, bushel of bananas to throw and chuck at him. So when he comes home, he's covered in banana goop. And he goes in the basement, like, complains and cries to the evil monkey, and he's like, I wish you were dead. I hate him. And he turns the key and it kills his mom. Like, it's pretty bad because, like, here his brother comes home from school early and he sees his mom in the kitchen, blood oozing out her eyes and her ears and her nose and her other open crevice. I think you get the gist. But her brain friggin' explodes in her head. What? That's pretty crazy. But, it doesn't matter because we get a jump cut to their mom's funeral and we meet the new caretakers, the aunt and the uncle, whose names I can't be bothered to remember nor look up. But after the funeral, Hal cuts up the monkey and it bleeds a black tar, which is a perfect indicator that it's literally a demonic toy and should not be anywhere near children. But who cares because he cuts this thing up and he throws it in the trash can and makes sure that it is just picked up by the trash company and just gone for good. So then they move to Maine, which not long after the monkey strikes again by sliming out their uncle after Billy finds the monkey on their porch and turning the key to see if it still kills people, either randomly or if it's like a wish granter situation that only deals in death. But the way the uncle dies is he gets trampled to death by a stampede of deer when he's hunting and sleeping, or when he's out on a hunt in a sleeping bag. When the morticians open his sleeping bag to empty the contents, this man is literally reduced to like a slime-like ooze that spills out onto the table. It's kind of like a mix of Welch's grape jelly and like huckleberry jam. Like it's kind of gross, but it's a really cool effect. But I'm just gonna skip a little bit because this movie is like 48% filler. No, I wouldn't even say 48. Maybe like 60% filler. It's like 24 years go by. Ankh gets slimed out by getting a fistful of taco in her face, sets her head on fire, then runs outside to get her head skewered. You know, Hal lives a pathetic life working as a grocery store like attendant or whatever they're called. He has a son, only one son, only sees him like once a year by his own choice, which is stupid. Like, oh, he believes that this monkey's a curse. So he's going, oh, I don't want my son to suffer this thing. Even though, like, if he dies, the monkey's just gonna go meet him. Like, let's be real here. It's like a curse they're gonna have to accept. So they're like, there's like no way to get rid of him. But who cares? Because his son's name is Petey. So his name is just annoying. But I think it fits perfectly because Petey's just annoying. And we also see their new husband, or not husband. Well, yeah, he's his wife's new husband, Elijah Woods. What? Isn't that crazy? But Elijah Woods mansplains about being a good dad because, like I said, he only sees Hal once a year. So after he's like, I'm going to be a better dad than you in every other way, and I'm going to take custody of him so you no longer have to deal with him. So, Hal obviously does not like this sleight of hand. So he just tries to, I don't know, like, it's uncomfortable watching them together because it's very clearly like a stranger in his own home. Except he's not even in the house because he takes him to a motel to spend the night at, where Hal gets a call from his estranged brother saying that their aunt had just died. Pretty crazy, but they also believe that the monkey's involved. So, like I said, how Hal believes the monkey's a generational curse, pretty much bringing up the idea of the monkey, just like allows him to be involved in everything they do. It's like summoning Beetlejuice, except it's monkey, monkey, monkey. And, he just kind of allows this little AC unit thing to fall from the roof. It doesn't hit him, surprisingly, but it hits this puddle that's like in front of him, electrifies it. And we see a woman about to go for a midnight swim just straight up explode as soon as her body touches the water because, like I said, the air conditioner fell off the roof and lands in a puddle of water. But, these boys, I also did forget to mention this. When they were boys, they threw the monkey into like a box, chained that hoe up, and threw it down a well. So, it shouldn't be there. Like, the monkey's gone. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So, after this little incident, Hal makes it to the house where he learns there was a yard sale there. And he asks a lady that was actually hosting the yard sale if there was a monkey there. But, there were no telltale signs that it was there. So, when he's with this realtor lady, they peruse the house. And Petey is like, I want to go see your childhood bedroom. But Hal's like, shut up, boy. And he tells him to sit in the car, but Petey, like, cries and complains about it. So Hal just lets him go in, I guess. But, Hal and the realtor lady open a door inside the house that actually is, like, an entire gun room. And I'm going to let you take a guess of what happens when she does open the door. Does she A, walk into the room and nothing happen? B, dodge a stray bullet? C, let Hal walk in first to look around the room? Or D, get completely eviscerated by a loose double-barrel shotgun? If you chose D, you'd be right, because this girl gets poked by a shotgun and spray blood all over Hal and the room. I also forgot to mention, like I said, Hal didn't mention to Petey that he had any other family members. So, like, when the realtor said that he actually had a brother, Petey throws a hissy fit, stays a little frustrated in character, like, you didn't tell me anything, you don't love me. It's stupid. But we learned that another guy actually pulled up to the house not too long before this that looks like a Cro-Magnon ape man actually bought the evil monkey and gave it to a guy. I don't know what to tell you. What I'm saying is the script I wrote, and the script took me like 2 weeks. Like, if I was going to do some proofreading, I would have done something better about it. But who cares, because Hal's brother Billy calls and tells him he's got to wait at another motel and that he'll send him a signal. And Hal gets so fed up with his brother that he actually finds out he still lives in the town. You know, what do you do if you haven't gotten over anything? You decide to live in the town and call yourself Mrs. Monkey, which is a funny way of bringing back the memory of bullying his brother. Skipping again, because like I said, there's so much filler. Billy has developed an obsession with this monkey. Like, I'm talking like, I'm surprised he has not done horrendous acts to it. But pretty much after he figured out that Hal was the one that killed their mom preemptively by turning the key of this dirty little chimp thing, after they threw the monkey down the well, Billy came down just to find the key, and he kept it. And he quite literally has been seeing the monkey everywhere, just all the time. So I'm pretty much just gonna say every time he sees this monkey, I call it monkey vision. And with this monkey vision, he sees the monkey everywhere he goes. Like I'm telling you, he goes to the movie theater, he goes to the whorehouse, he goes to like a Chinese restaurant, and he's just thinking about the monkey all the time. So when he actually gets the monkey from that Cro-Magnon ape guy I was talking about a while ago, he totally chimps out and tells Hal that he's like, yo, come to town. Because he thinks that this monkey's got like a, I don't know, a 50-mile radius or whatever. So it's like as close as he gets to him being near him, I think he's assuming that the monkey will actually get him. It's kind of like when you got a Call of Duty like kill streak and you have the gunship, and you're trying to slime them out. Everybody that's down there, except you can't really get them if you don't have a clear sight. This is pretty much how Hal is like treated by his own brother with this demon monkey toy. But doesn't matter because Billy straight treats this thing like a god, and he uses his power to try and kill Hal every time. And every time he does turn the key, it just kills a ton of different people around town. I don't really know what to tell you about that because that little monkey man actually tries to go back, and a monkey man, I'm talking about that caveman looking guy, actually finds Hal and Petey after he learns that they're related. And after he finds them, they pretty much kidnap them and take him to Billy's compound, where the caveman guy sends Petey into the building to steal the monkey. Billy has never like left his compound or whatever, so this whole entire building is pretty much filled to the brim with traps. And every time Petey's like trying to maneuver around this whole thing, he comes so close to dying. Like some of these traps are kind of cool. Like there's a like falling swords or whatever that's like above the staircase. There's axes and stuff that swing out. It's kind of like that one. Trying to think of something that would actually be applicable. The Skyrim, the first trial thing you got to do with a little dragon claw, where you go to Black Helm's Keep, I believe is what it was called, and you have to go and get the golden claw. I'm spurging out over Skyrim. Sorry, guys, I put 24 hours into the game in like a week. My fault, gang. But anyway, after they pull up to the compound and sneak their way inside, they pretty much find Billy, and Petey is like easily manipulated to turn the monkey's key. But doesn't matter because we cut back to the car and see Hal and the caveman where they're arguing about leaving to go get Petey. The caveman scratches his head with the barrel of his gun, finger still on the trigger, and accidentally discharges the gun. In doing so, a wasp hive is shot, and all the wasps get so mad that they follow the bullet's trajectory back into the caveman's mouth. Yucky. It was so nasty watching all these wasps burrow their way into his freaking face. Hal then runs inside and is greeted by Petey. These two people coming together now face Billy, now a crazed man, that still wears his funeral suit from childhood. It's also kind of like form-fitted, so it's normal to his size, I guess. But, who cares? Because Hal tries to get the monkey back from Billy, but instead ends up in a bit of a tussle between them. And Billy pretty much says, "You're the reason Mom's dead," and Hal says, "You're a bitch." And he, like, pimp slaps him onto the ground. And Hal, being an absolute Chad, destroys Billy in combat, forcing Billy to be a baby and throw a fit, even though he's playing with the monkey in a rough way. The monkey don't really like that. So, what did the monkey do? It gets so mad that it pretty much kills every single person in town. which is, pretty bad. Like, I'm talking a friggin' 747 crashes into the town. Like, that's like 80 people that die, which is insane. The whole town just pretty much is set ablaze. But Hal tries to convince Billy that they can still be a family if they get over the death of their mom from like 20 years ago. But in this heartwarming scene, Billy's head gets splattered with a bowling ball with their mom's name on it. Okay, that was pretty crazy. But with Hal not being upset over this death, he and Petey just leave and come to terms with accepting this monkey. So, it's like their family member that they didn't want, nor will they ever try to learn. But who cares? That was the monkey. I didn't hate it. I didn't really love it. But, the practical effects they use in the movie is like 1,000,000% justifies the cost it made. But, like, the actors were fun. That ugly ass monkey was an interesting touch. I do think it looked like, I don't know. I think if it looked cutesy and friendly, it would not be near any way or any sort of like why am I spurging out right now? It wouldn't be as menacing as it was supposed to be if it didn't look this evil looking. And in doing a bit of research, I actually learned that this movie was based off a Stephen King short story that Stephen King actually watched and said that he liked the movie because it was closely modeled after the Tony set for the old version. The set design for the movie was great. I did really like how they made the aunt and the uncle's house look like a comical caricature of an outdoorsy family would have if their home was supposed to be in the 70s, even though they were the 80s. And they were swingers. I forgot to mention that they were swingers, which is the funniest thing in the world. But, as I said, that was the monkey. And anyway, it's time for our third entry, the Amityville Horror Movie, starring Ryan Reynolds. This movie was probably one of the few ghost movies that I've actually covered so far, and I gotta say it wasn't too bad. If anything, it's just an average ghost movie. So, with that entailed, let's begin the film summary. The movie kicks off with a man that straight up executes his entire family. I'm talking like this man grabbed a Henry repeater from his closet and cleared house like he was trying to get stream clips from a Call of Duty video. But after watching this guy slime out his entire family, he pleads insanity when he's in court and goes off to prison. Okay, that sucks. But now we see a new family. This entails Ryan Reynolds playing a guy named George Lutz. And I couldn't remember the other wife's name, nor did I bother Googling, because, why would I Google that? But his wife's name is Kathy Lutz. And, they're about to crack, start about going crazy on it. But, they forget to lock the door. So the wife's son comes in saying, "What are you doing to my mom?" And Ryan Reynolds somehow deviates this like a champ, begins playing around with his boy, and then makes breakfast for the rest of the other kids, which is like, not bad deflecting right there. But, I did say the rest of the kids. That's right, there's some more baggage to the mother since her husband did die and leave behind 3 whole children. Since the youngest are like 6 and 10, they open George with big, wide arms, but the oldest stepson is cold and callous towards George, because in his eyes, there's no replacing the first dad. That's Papa numero uno. So they go back and forth, button heads throughout the entire movie, but later on we actually see George and Kathy buy the Amityville house, the one where those previous tenants got slimed out. But it was a massive house. Like, I'm telling you, that thing was like 3 stories, 16 acres of land, waterfront, the works. That thing was 80 grand in 1975. Now think about it. It's 1975. You got a big old family, and you have a 3-bedroom house, and as big as it needs to be for that growing family. Then you see this steal of a big, beautiful house, this rich neighborhood that's got like a Black Friday price reduction. Even though the entire family might have been killed there, and the previous owner might have been a schizo that heard the TV say, "Run this block like Prime King Bond," and agrees to do it by dropping a simple "Bo shizzle." Like, what are you going to do about that? That's an obvious steal right there. But, I don't blame him. That's 80 grand in comparison to the $160,000 that were next to him, which is, insane for that kind of price. But it's 1975. They don't have the kind of house market inflation or whatever they got now. But further into the family relation, they move into this joint, learn the daughter's playing with an imaginary friend. If I heard my kid was doing that, straight to church. Nope, no, 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 not going to church. We're gonna get the priest to come here. He's going to live in our house. I'm telling you, he will live in the closet like Harry Potter, except I'll probably give him a whole shelf for his rosaries. But like, I don't know, skipping further into the movie, like a lot further, George starts getting increasingly agitated by his older stepson because he's a cold, whiny baby. Especially when they get a babysitter. He complains until he realizes that he's got an absolute baddie that wears clothes inspired by the idea of Daisy Dukes for every article of clothing. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the Dukes of Hazzard. You know, I don't know if you guys remember that, but they had something going on over there. But that's pretty much what this girl's whole wardrobe looks like. But it's not really that good. Or at least, actually, everything was going smooth until the babysitter starts telling a scary story, i.e., the actual fate of the family that lives there, and goes into the sister's closet. And she gets mentally tormented by the family's, or the old family's daughter, I mean. You know, the one that got slimed out, she got a bullet hole to the head. And they do something pretty wicked here. Like, I'm telling you, they press her, like, the babysitter's finger into the open forehead hole. I don't know. It's kind of gross. I can't really explain it in a certain way because YouTube kind of doesn't like that. But obviously, this happening to you traumatizes her and sends her off into what I can only assume to be an insane asylum. Much later, George is tormented by a not so subtle innuendo to slime out his whole family, except George got the urge to resist this as like an absolute Chad. So he instead provides harsh punishment. Sorry, guys. I had heartburn and that made me burp a bit. This instead provides him harsh punishments to his stepkids. Skipping even more, it's like day 17 of living there. And George gets so sick of his family dog waking him up at like the dead of night, so he axes him a question for being so loud. And yes, I did make a pun, but I can do what I want. So he wakes up the next day to the kids asking him where the dog is. Later on, he overhears his stepson through the vents calling him some rude names for the 70s like a douchebag, a prick, a jerk, douche nozzle, fathead, etc. Those words. Then the big next day, I guess, or no, then the next day, George and the oldest boy are outside cutting wood, and he makes the boy hold the logs, making you think he's going to get axed next. Instead, he just gets up and leaves after like swinging that thing 4 times. Skipping so much more. The daughter's imaginary friend somehow convinces her to climb up to the top of the house and just jump, like Free Bird Tom Petty style. But George and Kathy save her. Kathy tells her to, stop being stupid and that she can't do things like that. And the daughter says she did it because she wants to see her dad. Which, obviously makes George crash out. And he says, you all of you are crazy. You're all insane. But, it's like the last week of the family living out house. Kathy decides to go to church to see if she can fix her family with divine intervention. And the priest says, when should I pull up? And she says, anytime, dog, anytime. That being said, when he does show up, like the next day, he's immediately attacked by flies, forcing him to leave the house. Seeing as the help said, hell no, they still stay the night for some reason. Except this time, George finally dips into murder mode and tries to slime out everybody in the house after he tore up the basement to make coffins for every single member of the family. The only one he missed was the dogs. But we're not going to get into poor old Sparky because he's gone. I think he threw him in the harbor or whatever, Bay Harbor Butcher style. But after the ghost fully possesses George, it locks just about every single door and window in the house and forces them to the roof. After a brief chase across the roof, George makes it to the roof and corners the rest of the family with his shotgun. We think they're done until the stepson locks in for a second. He like rips the pole off the side of the house and he like swings that thing so hard into his face. He like flies off the house and he like lands headfirst into the mud, which by the way is around like a 4-story roof, by the way. That should have immediately killed him. And that's what the family thought too, because they actually climb down and they like think about tying him up because he can get up any time. But instead, we see a little Final Destination-esque premonition where George says, "Nah, I'd win." He gets up, rams an axe into Kathy's gut, shoots the second older son. But as like I said, it's not real. They tie him up and they put him on the speedboat as they leave the building's premises. Then we fade to black, ending the Amityville Horror. The movie was just a basic poltergeist movie, but it did have an interesting amount of detail when they designed the property. That was pretty cool. I thought that all the little small things they had in there that you never even noticed. What did they notice? I'm not going to tell you. If you actually watched the movie, I would. But, I can do what I want to because it's my YouTube channel. And if I want to say something gross, I'll say something gross. Like, I thought the movie had fun wound design. That's something gross. Like that scene where the babysitter's forced to push her finger in that little bullet hole. That was really grody. Yeah, that was straight nasty and left me uncomfortable, but it was such a great special effect. Bada bing, bada boom, baby. That's done with the Amityville horror, and now we're moving on to our next film. We're watching The Witch. I'm a sucker for these kinds of movies. I love a good world building movie that has no shame in setting the tone, like right off the bat. This movie kicks off with our main family being exiled from their Puritan community for what I believe was the husband preaching a different kind of word of God, not Christian Catholicism or whatever it was they were supposed to teach as Puritans. But we've got this full load of people living amongst his family. I'm talking like 5 kids, 1 mom, 1 dad, and that's it. But if they're really trying to survive this wild like wilderness of America, they should have had like 13 kids and a couple old hags that nagged them constantly about being uncomfortable to be around. But nope, I'm saying these people are fresh off the boat from England. So when they're forced to rebuild their lives for like the 3rd time, they kind of struggle for this upcoming winter. A bit into the movie, we see the characters Thomason, the oldest daughter, playing with the newborn baby, who immediately gets snatched without a trace. This, of course, makes the mom very pissed and expresses her disdain toward her every chance she gets. Later that night, we see a crazy naked woman rubbing some blood-like substance all over her body while chanting some crazy shit. And, okay, I'm telling you, they show everything in this scene. The only thing you don't really see is that little, Arby's sandwich that swings down there, because Lord knows nobody wants to see that. But, you do see some nasty witch titties, and those are gross. But, the father, named William, takes the oldest boy, Caleb, on a hunt because they can't really grow anything in that nasty dirt. So it pretty much means that the mom is, being lied to uh, by her family because, she told them, strictly said, do not go into the woods. Because, you can't exactly lose any more people. You're dropping flies at that point. You're really, soiling everything else. But, what are you going to do? Because the mother strictly just told these guys, if you go past that little brook, I'm going to beat your ass. But skipping a bit to the movie, and family tensions begin to arise even more, the mother, Catherine, debates with William that Thomason is almost a teenager and needs to be put in another home to cater to a new family. Thomason and Caleb hear from another room that's right across from them with paper-thin walls and decide to prove that they're useful to their parents by going on a hunt. In doing so, Thomason gets knocked off a horse, and Caleb disappears in the woods for an entire day. We see the family begin to crack apart even more when Thomason eventually comes back to the farmstead without her brother. That's obviously a problem, because, being the older sister, you're supposed to watch your brother. But nope, little man's gone, and Catherine begins her rant about her being evil again and blames her for the disappearance of the little baby Samuel. Later that night, we see Caleb on his little adventure lost in the woods until he happens upon a hovel in the forest with a very hot witch that entices him into the, I'm telling you, when she's enticing him, she's doing that, curl your finger over at that little man. And, being intrigued, and he's like a 13-year-old boy, he obviously follows this woman into a dilapidated building and straight Frenches up this little boy. And, after a while, Caleb appears back at the farmstead completely naked and barely standing, and in the rain. Uh-oh. I won't say what happened, but you can very obviously clue yourself into what just happened. But, that's kind of gross. His parents find him, get him back into the bed to rest, but they can only do so much since they don't really know what happened to him and what is currently still happening to him because he's been possessed or whatever, hexed or whatever witches do. Skipping a few days, the family thinks it's high time to go back to the little plantation Puritan colony because they kind of struggle here a little bit. Like, also, they can't help Caleb. Like, anybody else got some medical knowledge other than the word of God? Because, he's kind of dying, and it's kind of hard to survive the upcoming winter with no food. But this big crack in the family's foundation becomes so big, the two littlest children, Mercy and Jonas, express their evil side as they tell Thomason that they hear a black goat whisper to them. They call this black goat Black Phillip, pretty much because he's corrupted these twins so much to a point that when Caleb is convulsing in his bed, dripping in sweat, these twins also begin to convulse and
He's
squeal
real.
in like just
Dude, take my
ear pulling,
picture.
like stabbing, like
Oh no,
pain
Bert.
when the family is like reciting a prayer over Caleb. One thing from this scene that was just absolutely wicked is when he screams about his bones being on fire and his gut feels like it's gonna burst. He spits up an apple from his mouth, convulses some more, and just like he gets up, all the pain just stops. The other twins are also not convulsing anymore. And Caleb like rises up from his bed like the friggin' the mummy from that one mummy movie with what is it, Brendan Fraser. They pretty much just have him say, God is beautiful. His light shines down on me, and I welcome him with open arms, and then he dies. You know, then the twins start convulsing again, then they stop and go silent. That was crazy. Like, I don't, that was a very interesting thing to see because, like, Thomason tells William that the twins are having, like, they are not having, they already did, they sold their souls to the devil, and the black goat is the perpetrator. William thinks that this is just a little annoying game that the kids have come up with, and he boards Thomason and the other twins inside the goat hovel, which is crazy. Fast forward a bit, William has a standoff with the black goat as he addresses it after seeing the hovels torn apart with the twins dead and Thomason knocked out cold, which is crazy. He addresses the goat as the agent of sin, which ultimately kills him by impaling him with its horn, ramming him into a firewood pile, and then he gets crushed to death by said firewood pile. Thomason awakes and is attacked by Catherine because every member of the family is dead, and it all started with Thomason. So she and Catherine have a huge fight that ends up with Thomason cutting into her mom with a knife. Uh, you know, family relation. You got to get in a little bit of a backyard brawl every now and then. But Thomason, drenched in blood and despair, calls to the goat to sell her soul. And we get the last scene of the movie with Thomason levitating around a bonfire, naked around other witches chanting something. And that is the end of The Witch. Like I said, the movie is a slow burn delight that's left me at the edge of my seat every single time the family begins their heated arguments. From the scenes of seeing the father, I want to say it was kind of symbolic to him just suffering from such an immense level of responsibility that his death feels like uh, just everything he had crumbling as like his critical role to this family just like shatters his world as everybody around him just starts dying. So, like without yeah, okay, with what I just said, probably is without a doubt my most critical thinking, like sort of sense you guys are going to get from me. Because next on the block is The Pope's Exorcist. Side note, kind of like what I said at the very beginning of this movie, it's got some titties, got some booty cheeks, and foul language. Like I said, it's a horror movie. They're obviously going to do that because it's an easy little cash grab. But The Pope's Exorcist can be explained in a few short sentences, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. The movie starts out with Russell Crowe headlining as a head exorcist named Gabriel Amort, who is pretty much the bad boy of the Vatican who has a high rate of successful exorcisms, with some done in unorthodox manner. We see a method of him egging on a demon possessing someone, so he goads it in possessing a little pig, which, allows him to blow that shit smooth off to get rid of the demon. And fast forward a bit, um, he's sent back to the Vatican. They're like, yo, shit is stupid. You gonna get us in trouble. And your method might be effective, but that's animal sacrifice. And he says, screw you. You ain't my head pope. Go have him fire me. You can't tell me not to do my job. Whatever. But like I said, Russell Crowe is the bad boy of the Vatican. Fast forward a little bit, and we see a family move into this big ass house in Spain that they recently obtained through the death of their mother's husband. Gabriel is called by the modern Vatican. Like I said, he's just simply too good at his job at vanquishing evil. And, who's the head of the board? Obviously, it's an American cardinal. And he said, we'll relieve you of your job if you just, stop doing it because you, as the head exorcist, are no longer needed. And Gabriel said, bullshit. If you don't need me, I'll just leave. But you gotta ask my pope. So, cutting back to the new family in Spain again, the mother's son experiences some strange symptoms that are early signs of possession. The mother doesn't notice the signs, so when she takes him to the doctor instead, it just seems to get worse, and they actually tell her he's fine but needs psychiatric care because, he's crazy. After taking him home, he immediately goes into full possession and scares his mom and sister. This warrants the uh, local priest to get, involved, and, he kind of gets thrown out the room and slams into a cabinet and just destroys that thing. Like, I don't really know what to tell you because it's pretty bad. But after this happens to the poor guy, he is just, calling upon Gabriel Amort, specifically asked to go and get this guy to clear him out. So Gabriel Amort is called by the Pope and said, check this guy out because, I know you him. You're literally that guy. So he sits his comically huge body on this tiny ass moped to drive from Spain or from Italy to Spain. Sorry guys, I got those mixed up because he does sit his big ass on a tiny moped several times in this movie. But he pulls up to the family, investigates the house and possessed child, and determines it is indeed a possessed scenario with a very strong demon. Seeing as he needs help with this exorcism, he uses the local priest that got his ass flung out the room 5 minutes ago, and he learns that he called off his relationship with a hot-ass Spanish girl that gave him the ultimatum of the church or her. And he said he's got the love of God first and foremost and says adios. He literally just says goodbye, babe, and then he's gone, and then he still is crying about it. But Gabriel Amort was such a Chad that he actually served as a partisan in World War II for Italy fighting against Nazis. Until one day they got squad wiped, and he was the only survivor. And in this moment, he actually realized he was a better fit serving for God. Until one day, there was a woman that he believes he failed because he actually labeled her a mental disturbance case instead of an actual possession, which in turn led her to careen into the pavement after thinking nobody believed her. Pretty crazy that happened. Because after this first failed attempt of exorcism, Gabriel and the other priest literally rethink their whole strategy. They say that this little boy is so nasty and decrepit looking that they honestly have no idea what to do about it. So, the mother tries to comfort the boy, but since he's possessed, he straight up fondles her titties, and he says some really wretched, nasty things about his mom and sister. So, very obviously the demon is just mean because it's a demon and they're not cool and they're bad and evil. But after this happens, the priest decided it's time for round two. So, with a new strategy and after another confession, they still end up failing, leading Gabriel to dig around the property to learn that this place was once part of a Spanish Inquisition area, which in other terms means this place was like a black book from the Vatican, meaning nobody else knows what happened because there's nothing that happened there, if you catch my drift. So Gabriel and the other priests dwell into the heart of the abbey of this property to discover that it housed a great evil that was released when they began the construction on it. They find a hidden room that contains the skeletal remains of a prolific monk that was known for his exorcisms. On his body was the journal that pretty much said the church was infiltrated by evil, and everything from the Spanish Inquisition to now was because the evil that crept into the church. After reading the book, they learn the demon's name is Asmongold. Asmongold feels his name being called because it immediately makes the little boy convulse. But this also makes the other priest that tried to tell Gabriel and Mort that his job was or not his job was useless, begins to convulse in the middle of a prayer, which is crazy because, like they said, the evil has already been a church and it was infiltrated by an American. What? Yeah, I'm joking. It wasn't infiltrated, but I mean, this still is a possessed guy in there who just it happens to be American, but just. I'm sorry, guys. Don't leave. Don't stay on the video, please. I'm sorry. I'm not funny. But whatever. At the same time of this happening, the Pope that sent Gabriel Amor to Spain has a heart attack and is urgently rushed to the hospital. Gabriel and the other priest and the two people of the family that aren't possessed are put into the same room as a possessed boy and try to help him. But instead, this makes the situation worse when he is constantly forced to see her say, or Jesus, when did I write that? When he is constantly forced to see the girl he tried to say or save say he is a failure, that he's the reason everyone is going to die in the house. That's a heavy load right there. But Gabriel lets the demon possess him in order to save the family because, everyone, like he said, is going to die. But seeing as he got the iron will of a champ, he holds out the demon until he's all the way down in the abbey where he found the name Asmongold. The local priest comes down to save Amort by reading of the Bible and quoting a Latin verse at him. While this splits the demon from Gabriel, they both get up to successfully vanquish the demon by using charms blessed by the Vatican. After some time passes, they are called by the Vatican together to first ordain the local priest into the Vatican Church to assign them into finding the rest of these stronger demons. After saying "we're in," the movie cuts to a card that says these events were partially true and that Gabriel's event or books were pretty good, and the ending of the Pope's Exorcist begins to cut in. This movie is pretty cool. Had some scary moments that made me jump a little. Some of the wire effects used to fling the cast were also kind of funny to watch. The makeup used to make the boy look like he was like decaying was pretty fire as well. And all in all, wasn't that bad. Probably watch it again next year. But that was the end of The Pope's Exorcist. Bing, bop, boop. Time for our next and final movie, Ghosts of War. This was kind of a mind freak movie that was, a little bit refreshing to see, seeing as the other movies I had weren't really too hard to think about. But as the story goes, it's a group of World War II soldiers waking up in a forest after wrecking through France, after Normandy. The squad leader wakes up first, dark and alone. With the sound of twigs breaking off in the distance, we see a man whose face is clouded in darkness, smoking a cigar, only to disappear right before anybody could see or notice him. Weird. They go about their normal day of laying out Nazis and looking for any important information that could give the Allies an upper hand on Germany. Because World War II is a bit hard on the Allies, but it's also even harder on Germany. They receive orders to go to a massive manor that was once preoccupied as a Nazi comm center before it got mopped out by a couple trigger-happy soldiers. After relieving the other stressed out and afraid soldiers, they take up positions inside the house and cook a scrum-diddly-umptious meal. I'm talking, they got like wine from the basement, they found sausages and salami, bread. I think they even had fruit, which is pretty crazy, because most soldiers didn't get their fruit. But this nice meal is interrupted when they begin to hear weird stuff coming from upstairs. Also, they see some weird things too, like apparitions and things that ain't there. One day, a battalion of Nazis pull up to the manor, and inside, they're, thinking there's nobody there because it's all dark, it's locked up, until a very loud clanging of what I think was the cabinet slamming open and closed is, extremely loud and lets the Nazis know outside that there's somebody in there. So, this prompts the soldiers to fight off an unending swarm of Nazis while dealing with the thought that there's something very angry and very loud that Loki kind of hates you inside. One of the soldiers instead sacrifices himself when they're in their little kerfuffle with the Nazis because they throw a grenade, and for some reason, instead of moving, he decides to move his body on top of it. And this doesn't really do much. It does jack diddly to the poor guy because it still goes off, throws everybody across the room like a friggin' tornado happened inside, and he's just like torn to pieces. He's not dead, unfortunately. I think I would rather be dead. But the soldiers somehow prevail, with the only casualties being just one man and a whole bunch of dead Nazis. By the way, like I said, he's not dead. He's just out of the fight, so there isn't much he can do. Like, I believe he's missing his, like, right arm and left leg, and he's, like, missing his lower half of his jaw, which is kind of gross. But I'm just going to skip a little bit more because the movie does have some filler, which is, it's a bit. But one of the soldiers actually found a diary that explains the whole family getting slimed out in horrendous ways. So they read around it like Mr. Rogers telling you a little thing about how to be a good person, except, it's about how a whole family is just tortured to death. So, eh, what can you do about that? These soldiers try their hardest to ease these ghosts' pain because not only do they scare them every chance they get, they also try to kill them whenever they're alone. So over time, we see these ghosts slowly revealing what they want. And since I don't think I actually said this earlier, these ghosts drop hints about the haunted house by informing them about hidden words through faint tapping in rooms, like Morse code. One line of code that these men are actually delivered is, "I have no legs," which is weird because, the only person who doesn't have a leg is that other guy. But, what can you do about that? Another hint that these ghosts leave for these guys is they actually drop strange phrases like Vetrulek and for some reason bits of Arabic. Where are you going to get Arabic in France? Like, I know the French tongue is weird, but I don't think it's Arabic. But that's a strange thing for a German French family. But after these men are drip fed some information, they actually learn that they should probably give these previous tenants a nice Christian burial because we actually learned that their bodies were just dumped somewhere on the property. And these ghosts decide to help them by finding their corpses, by dragging their sergeant all the way to some shack out in the field, where instead of seeing French corpses, we actually see some Afghani bodies. Like I said, pretty weird. And we cut back to the manor with some freshly dug graves, and the men are still reading that friggin' book. They actually decide to read them their last rites before they cover the graves. Skipping a little bit more again, we actually see these ghosts seem to be even more persistent in killing these people. Um, it does seem to actually work on one of the guys, or at least they succeed in killing one of them, because we actually learn the soldiers are in a medically induced coma that operates by putting them in a simulation to help ease their minds as they recover from extreme cases of bodily harm. The only problem is that the simulation seems to be haunted by an Afghani family. Jesus, I'm not forgetting English right now. Haunted by an Afghani family, because the soldiers are actually following. Were supposed to save a family from some Taliban insurgents, and they actually learned that their informant was a local doctor that had been giving an American group of, like, I think they were CIA agents first, Jesus, information about the Taliban's movements, and then they sent this group of soldiers to go and rescue this family and give them a good old exfiltration movement. But unfortunately, as soon as they got there, so did the Taliban. And Taliban don't really like when you're snitching. So they kind of had a little confrontation that came with a deliverance of a caravan full of angry men with AKs. You know, the whole family's washed out. The only person left alive is the wife of the doctor, and she rushes out with a massive, I'm talking like half a torso size of C4 and blows up in front of the entire squad. Before she dies, she casts a spell on the men that, were supposed to save the word or save the family and didn't do a single thing about it. So, she just drops Vetrulek and then they're like exploded or whatever. But, after that little brief rundown of the situation, the main squad leader explains that each time they got a coded message, it was actually their subconscious talking to them, like the "I have no legs" statements, because he actually blew up and got his legs ripped off. So the squad leader tells the doctors to put him back in the simulation because none of his men have woken up yet and are still dealing with a haunted computer simulation thing. So, they put him back in the simulation just to awake as it began. Dark and alone, with a snap of twigs from a nearby tree, stood a man, shrouded in the cover of the night, smoking a cigar. And that is the end of Ghosts of War. If anything, it kind of reminded me of something directed by M. Night Shyamalan, the guy who directed Sixth Sense, Cabin in the Wood. No, that was a different guy. Stuart Little. You know, it wasn't bad. I will say the twist was actually pretty fun and refreshing. The simulation part was kind of dumb, and frankly, the only way I think it could have been pulled off, like, it sounds great on paper, but it was not bad. It was really cool. The CGI was kind of lame, and if I'm being honest, the movie came out like 2020, so there really is no reason for it to look that bad, other than like budgetary costs. The injuries they designed for these guys look sick as hell, but for all effects used in this movie, it was pretty nice. I'd recommend this movie if you guys wanted to watch something that was fairly interesting. It wasn't really too scary, but it was pretty cool. Had some jumpy scenes. Um, I guess that's it. Well, my kernels, I think that's enough ghastly ghosts for you all. I got things to do like edit this video and start the preparations for the next. So as always, thanks for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.